As incredibly entertaining as this video is, I realise that not everybody will want to watch all of it, so here are some check times in case you want to skip ahead to a particular part.
For a while now, I've been talking about how we should be paying more attention to the early steel shafted clubs and how this was a great time for golf club development. But I haven't actually played many of those clubs. In fact, I can only think of one set of coated shaft clubs that I've played. So it's high time I put that right, and today we've got a set of Forgan clubs. I don't think that these are pre-war. I think that they are probably from the late 1940s or mid 1950s, somewhere around that era. Let's have a look at them anyway. We've got 4 woods in the set. These are, as I say, Forgan Parshot there, and it's also in the style with that band across the crown of the club of a lot of the hickory clubs. It's a plain face, no insert on it, which again is another feature of earlier clubs. Got a short length of whipping there and a ferrule with a nice white collar. We'll have a look on the sole. We can see that it's a straightforward sole plate. We've got the Forgan flag cleat mark there, and it says SP. I'm not sure what the SP stands for, and we've got D for driver. Another clue to the age here is the flathead screws. By the end of the 1950s, pretty much all clubs were using crosshead screws. So that's the driver. Also here we have look on the sole plate of that one, B for brassy, and as you'd expect it's got a brass sole plate, otherwise identical. We also have the S for spoon, and finally we've got this one, which is a number 4 wood. As you can see, there's quite a lot of loft on that one. I've not actually measured these. I will do that and put that up on the loft table in time. So that's the 4 woods. You can see there it is an Apollo shaft. Apollo steel shaft made in England. We're bringing the spoon, and that's a lot clearer, whippy. So as was quite common at the time, the longer clubs tended to have a more flexible shaft, because it was felt that a nice bit of whip in the shaft would give greater club head speed as the club was whipped through. When we get onto the irons, we'll see that they're a medium shaft. This is a flexible shaft. Whether I can actually measure that, I don't know. I might knock something up in the garage and try and work out how the deflection on it. But the grips on these, very good condition, as is the whole set. I don't think these have seen much play at all. Original leather grips, a little bit of whipping on the end there. That's the woods covered. Very nice match set of woods. Hard to find, but even harder is a full set complete with irons. So let's move on to the irons now.
My experience is that shafts have become softer as the years have progressed, so a regular shaft from, let's say, the 1960s is stiffer than a regular shaft of today. I've got 4 clubs here to do a test on. One is the Forgan Parshot from around 1950, a Slazenger Johnny Miller club from around 1982, a Walter Hagen Hague Ultra from 1963, and a fairly modern Mizuno MP001 from 2004.
Right, so here's how I'm going to measure the flex. I've clamped the shaft of the club so that this point here is 9 inches from the butt end. I'll do that with all the clubs. I'm then going to measure the shaft without any weight on it where it is. I'll put the camera in a tripod so that it doesn't move, and then I'll hang these weights on the end of the shaft. This is a total of 3 pounds, and I'll measure the deflection. So let's set that up. No weight on it, and it's measuring 227 across the face there. I'm now going to hang the weight on it, and I'm going to put that as close as I can to the head. So we have a look at that, and it's about 306. Right, next up the Slazenger Johnny Miller regular flex shaft, and that one is looking at 222 on the measure there. So if I hang the £3 weights on, yep, 297. Now we'll do the Walter Hagen stiff flex. That's looking like 234. Bring in the £3 weights. Is 308, I think. And finally the Mizuno MP001 with Grafalloy stiff shaft. This is about ½ an inch shorter than the other club, so I've measured it 8.5 inches from the butt end, which should give me the same length of flex. So we're looking at 238. Put the weights on. And it's gone to 310.
Here are the results then. I've no idea what the deflection should be, as I'm not a shaft expert, but the Forgan has clearly more deflection than the others. The Slazenger regular and the Walter Hagen stiff are surprisingly close together, however, and the Mizuno Grafalloy blue, which I thought was a legendary stiff shaft, is not that different to the Walter Hagen stiff. Perhaps that's down to the point where I hung the weights, which might have been closer to the head on the Mizuno than it was on the other clubs. But an interesting test in any result. Let's get onto the irons now.
Right, here are the irons. I've managed to get all the irons in the set on the table, and they run from 2 to 8, and we also have a blaster there. Now, you can't quite see it on the framing here, but the 2 iron has a chrome shaft, and so does the blaster. All the others have this brown shaft, so I'm not sure how these were put together. I'm assuming that they were sold as a set. All the ferrules are the same, and if we look at the shaft labels on 2 of the clubs, we have the chromed 2 iron here, the brown painted 3 iron. We can see that they're both Apollo, and if I turn them round, hopefully you'll be able to see that they're both medium flex. Grips are the same, nice wound leather grip. The design itself, if we move on to that, the Parshot, we can have a look at the profile of the club there. See, there's a nice bit of weight at the bottom, slight bit of additional weighting at the top, but it's pretty much a cleanish blade there. Nice ferrule, quite a long hosel as you'd expect with clubs of this period. I haven't measured the lofts on these, I will bring them up, but they are quite a lot weaker than modern clubs. If we move on to the 8 iron, have a look at that one. You can see, as we'd expect, we've got a slightly wider sole and a slightly heavier flange. And if we come on to the blaster, these were sold separately according to the adverts. I have played this one before. Very little wear on the face. The faces are a nice shot blasted finish. So that completes the irons. Now let's move on to the putter. Right, here's the putter then. It's a darker brown painted shaft on this one. Again, we've got a frosted face. This one is a punch dot face. Nice collar, good length hosel, and the shaft band on this one is a True Temper Rocket. And that dates this one to, as far as my research would suggest, at the earliest 1954. So that could suggest that the whole set was sold around about that time. The grip on this one, it's another leather grip, again in excellent condition. But what is this club anyway? I'll bring it round and get it the right way up. We can see that it is a Victory putter. I'm not aware of Victory irons, but the Victory putter was sold and it is mentioned in the advert in the PGCA catalogue. Again, we've got the registered mark, rustless made in England, and the style of the putter is a flanged blade. So, and it's got quite a bit of offset as well. So there we are, that's the putter. And I think that covers the whole set now.
As promised, here are the lofts for the clubs. And it's quite clear that the lofts for these early irons are a lot weaker than those seen today. The 3 iron is 27 degrees and the 8 iron is 49. I'll be taking the clubs out onto the course and filming how I get on with them in part 2 of this 2-part video. But to end part 1, let's take a look at the history of Forgan. The Forgan name is one of the greatest in early club making, and from the mid-19th century its impact on the trade was perhaps more than any other, changing what had been a cottage industry into a streamlined manufacturing process and making many significant club developments along the way. Robert Forgan was born in 1824 at St Andrews. He began making clubs in the shop of Hugh Philp, another great early club maker, in 1852. Philp's was the only such shop in St Andrews at the time, and he'd begun trading around 1815. Hugh Philp died in 1856, and Robert Forgan bought the business from his widow and began trading under the Forgan name. Forgan began forging his own iron heads in the 1890s. Prior to that, he bought all the heads for irons from either Robert White or Tom Stewart. In 1881, the business became R. Forgan Son when Robert's youngest son, Thomas, joined. And by the end of the 19th century, they had grown to be one of, if not the, biggest producers of golf clubs in the world. Golf ball production was also a very large part of the business. And in between all of that, Robert Forgan also found time to write what is perhaps the first successful book on golf, The Golfer's Handbook, first published in 1881. Original copies are now very expensive, but facsimiles can be obtained relatively cheaply on the internet. Robert Forgan died in 1900 and his son followed not many years later in 1906. Thereafter the business was run by Thomas's sons, Lawrence and Robert. While the company continued in operation, its finest days were over and it seems to have gradually declined as a major club producer, particularly following the First World War. A partnership with Spalding had begun sometime just before or after the Second World War, and cash-in putters are an obvious example of the partnership being made under licence from Spalding. Spalding took over management of the company, I'm not exactly sure when, but this is the earliest Forgan advert I found referencing Spalding, appearing in the August 1961 edition of Golf Monthly magazine. In 1963, Spalding closed their Scottish operation and moved all manufacture to their new factory in Northern Ireland, and at the same time they closed the Forgan shop and sold the machinery. The site was used for many years by the St Andrews Woolen Mill, and today it's the home of the Old Course shop. The Forgan shop occupied a fantastic site overlooking the 18th green of the Old Course. Forgan are still trading and are in fact the oldest golf company in the world, although they're now based in Redditch, Worcestershire, and all clubs are imported from Asia. Let's take a look now at some of the clubs I've come across. With such a long and rich history, it would be a major undertaking to include clubs dating back to 1860, so I'm going to concentrate on those starting in the steel shaft era. Unfortunately, I don't have dates for many of these clubs, but I'm going to try and put them in roughly the correct order, starting with this one, the Celtic, which is a coated shaft club with a lined face. Then we've got the Scotia, the coated shaft version, and a later flange sole version with a chrome shaft. Then we've got the Empire, the top one is a coated shaft, and the bottom one is a chrome shaft. Then we've got a coated shaft club stamped gold medal. There were many variations of the gold medal club, such as this one with the CFF model on the sole, which I presume was some kind of flange. Here we've got several deluxe clubs. I think the oldest one is on the left, this Skidder sole. Then we've got one similar to the clubs featured, and finally a more recent one. Here we've got a club marked J.H. Taylor. And here we've got a Forgan's Lady Luck club and one of the later clubs produced by Spalding, the Lady Luck version. The Power Pact. On the left we've got the American model produced under Forgan. You can see the influence of Spalding on this one. In the centre we have what I think is a Spalding club, and the final one is definitely a Spalding club as it appears in the 1962 catalogue. Next up, the ski sole with distinctive sole. Now we have the Carifar on the left, one produced by Forgan, and on the right from the Spalding catalogue of 1962. Next club is a Forgan Tommy Armour Silver Scott model. Not very common club, this one. And finally, some of the more recent clubs. The Cavity Back, the Power Play, mid-size head. The K Series, another cavity back design. Nearly all the later clubs were cavity backs. And finally, one produced to celebrate the 150 years of Forgan, the 150 years model. So this must have been produced in 2010. Well, that's about it. It just leaves me to say thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.